Okay, everybody, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we are privileged to meet on the Stalo unceded territory of the Pulalt, Chilliwack, and Samath. When we acknowledge the land on which we do our work, we are recognizing that the Stalo people have a unique relationship to this land on which we live, work, and play. And we also commit to ongoing reconciliation. The board also acknowledges the marginalization that many members of our community have experienced, whether as a result of race, sexual orientation, and gender identity, or other personal circumstances. The board is committed to providing a working and learning environment that recognizes the inherent dignity of all persons, that is inclusive of all, and that treats everyone with respect. Okay, trustees, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Trustee Reed, do I have a seconder? Trustee Bondar. I need to make a motion to amend the agenda. I would like to add a new item, which will become item 2.1, which is to add a presentation item about a school name change, as discussed previously with the board. Do I have a seconder for that? Trustee Bondar, are there any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor of adding 2.1 school name change to the agenda as the first item? Opposed? Okay. Did you see that? Okay. That motion carries. That motion carries. We're now, does anyone have any other amendments to the agenda? Trustee Swanky.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move an amendment to the order of business, if I may. The desire is to amend the agenda so that, pardon me, action item 5.1 and 5.2 may be considered immediately following our new 2.1 presentation. I'm happy to speak to the rationale if there's a seconder.
Do I have a seconder? Trustee Bondar. Trustee Swanky.
Thank you. The request is just out of respect for staff time. It's an incredibly busy time of year, and I know there are educators, teachers, staff in the room that have other commitments this evening.
Does anyone else wish to speak to that motion? Essentially, this would have the two action items up before we go into the strategic plan update, just so that staff can go home and do their work. All right, seeing no objections or no other comments, all those in favor of moving 5.1 and 5.2 up ahead of the strategic plan update? Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, are there any other changes to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda as amended? That's unanimous, thank you, trustees. Okay, on to 1.3, which is reading and approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Trustee Bondar, seconded by Trustee Westerby. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor of approving the minutes as circulated? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to the new 2.1, which is school name change. And this is being presented by Lisa Wallace, the principal of, well, I'll leave that in suspense because that's part of the presentation. Lisa, push your right hand button.
Thank you. I'm here to propose a rationale for a name change of Cultus Lake Community School to Cultus Lake Swilcha Community School. The rationale for this name change is that a significant percentage of our population is Indigenous, and we felt it was time to honor our place as visitors on the Stalo lands and within our Suwali community. And as part of our process through Truth and Reconciliation, we have partnered with our Suwali community on many projects throughout the years that I've been at Cultus Lake. Last year we completed our Swallam project, and this year we're working on our co-naming. Each endeavor has been made to build our bridge between our school and our community. So the process of our consultation, our journey began with our Indigenous Education Success Grant proposal this year. We met with our staff and our community to discuss our direction for this year. And our goal was a focus on honoring our Indigenous learners, their families, and how to increase representation within our school. Our school is very unique in that we have many school partners. We have Suwali, we have our Cultus Lake Park Sport area, we have our Columbia Valley, and we also have our Cultus Lake Community School Association, because we're a community school, who all share and use our space. So we are a hub in what could be considered a relatively remote area. And as such, it's our responsibility to demonstrate an open heart and truthful commitment to reconciliation within our Indigenous community. So this process, we met with a Suwali artist, Jason Roberts, to start discussing the stories of our area. And then we met with Dana St. Dennis, who's our Suwali education coordinator, and Brenda Point, who is our district principal of Indigenous education, to propose our idea of a school co-naming. We put a request out to our Suwali community in asking that they share ideas of what some co-naming options might be, based and connected on the stories of the local area. And so with their input, we received 5 options. And then we enlisted the help of our Indigenous education teachers to help us with the pronunciation so that we could write up a survey to send out to all of our families to get their voices on the project. So our survey went out in April and closed April 29th. So our timeline, our total timeline went throughout the whole year. So October was our staff writing our grant. November we met with Suwali members, the education and our elder. January we met with Jason Roberts. In February we shared stories and with our staff, and then in March we asked the Suwali community for those ideas of names, and then in April we had our Indigenous Ed department help us with the phonetics. So then our survey went out at the beginning of April and closed April 29th, and through that survey we heard the voices of Suwali, our community, our staff, and our students. So we had a great breadth of input on this. And we had a total of 120 community responses from our survey. We only have 134 families at our school. So this means that 90% of our families responded. All of our students also gave their input on what our co-name should be. So we have 180 students at our school who also shared their voice. So our co-naming went out, and the name was chosen at the end of April. And the name that our community, our staff, and our students decided upon was Swilcha. So we are asking for approval for our school to be co-named Cultus Lake Swilcha Community School. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Can you press your right hand button again? Awesome. So thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate it. I just want to point out, although Lisa Wallace just presented it as if it's a proposal, the board has actually approved this. So we approved this at our in-camera meeting. We made a motion to then reveal it to the public, and she's redone her presentation for you. It makes it sound like we're still in the process, but we actually did approve this. Our naming of facilities policy says that that occurs in an in-camera meeting. So that's what we did, but we didn't want to leave that behind closed doors and have you not know what happened. So this is the exact same presentation that the board saw about an hour and a half ago. So we're really thrilled to have Cultus Lake Swilcha as our new name for your lovely school, and thank you for all the hard work that you've done for us. Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to, I guess it would be 2.2 now, but it's the former 5.1, which is BAA course approvals. So there'll be 5.1, 5.11, 5.12, and 5.13, and they are going to be explained by Trustee Sankey.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the board accommodating the change in order of business tonight. The first order, 5.1, is 5 courses that are coming to the board for approval. 3 of them will be presented on block. There are 3 distinct courses, being 10, 11, and 12. And introducing our presenters this evening, I want to invite Principal Sean Wicker to identify and introduce each of them, and we'll work from there.
Thanks for having us here today. So we do have 3 courses, in total 5, as Drumline is 3 separate courses. This work has come out of our recent audit in terms of needing to look at our BAA courses, the process, and using our BAA committee to ensure that we have all of our paperwork in place for all of our courses, that our course frameworks are done in a way that honors the course and the BC Ministry's structure for curriculum. So tonight we have presentations from Sardis Secondary, from GW Graham Secondary, and a combined presentation of Imagine High Integrated Arts and Technology and Queacle Secondary. So our first presentation is the Criminology 11, and I'd like to call up Tracy Wolbeck and Beth Clark from GW Graham.
What do I push? Am I good? I'm on. Okay, thank you. Hello, I'm Tracy Wolbeck, and I'll be presenting Criminology 11 at GW Graham. So why Criminology 11 at this time? Mainly I created this course out of student engagement. It's obviously a very relevant and current topic that's changing every day. Could theoretically be a different course every day, so that really generates a lot of interest with students and adults as well. We have a lot of students, I'm not sure if other high schools are the same, but at GW who are interested in pursuing careers in post-secondary in criminology, and until recently we haven't had a high school option for kids to pursue any of these avenues, so I thought now would be a good time for them to be able to see some of the things that criminology offers. And I was a Mountie for 16 years before retiring officially about 6 years ago. So I'm able to bring a bit of a real world example and experience to the classroom, which gives me a little bit of street cred. And I can also dispel the myths that homicides can actually be solved in a Netflix episode, which is not the case. So kids are disappointed to hear that, but they like the journey that we go on. And the big ideas that we focus on, my background was in media, that's me in the corner there. My last 5 years were spent as the Senior Communications Officer with the RCMP in the Upper Fraser Valley. So one of the themes that we touch on throughout the course is media coverage of true crime events and how this influences the lens through which society interprets and processes violent crime specifically. We analyze media coverage around big cases, local and global, and look at critically the media coverage and if this was a hindrance to the investigation itself or if it was made to sensationalize the event. One of the big themes, is the social and cultural impact of the ongoing missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls investigation. So we cover the Picton investigation, the Highway of Tears, and most recently, the Jeremy Sabicki case out of Winnipeg, where he was charged with 4 counts of first-degree homicide in 4 Indigenous women. So we talk about the impact of that culturally as a country ourselves, because this continues to happen. And too often in history, I feel that we remember the names of offenders and never victims. So it's a focus on my course that students appreciate and acknowledge the victims in our journey and not focusing on the offenders themselves. We focus on the advancements in forensic technology and how this has led to the identification and conviction of offenders from crimes committed decades ago. So with the advent of forensic genealogy, we're seeing now crimes from the 60s and 70s are being solved. So my kids go on a deep dive on a case from many years ago and sort of dive into how forensics has changed and evolved over the years to solve that case now. We do a practical fingerprint component as well, where kids get to identify using minutia characteristics their teachers that have submitted their fingerprints to a data bank earlier in the year, so that's been a big hit for them. And lastly, how understanding crime from various perspectives allows students to think more critically about crime and its impact on community. So we talk a lot about the idea of secondary victimization and what that looks like, and how repeated media exposure can traumatize and victimize the public, and how entire communities can be victimized, considered secondary victims, depending on the crimes that happen in their area. And the first people's principles of learning that are applied in my course are how learning involves recognizing the consequences of one's own actions. Learning is embedded in memory, history, and story. And learning requires exploration of one's own identity. And that is Criminology 11.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? Trustee Bond. There.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Something that you said, well, many things that you said make me an instant supporter of this. The way that you are covering incredibly important aspects of Canadian history, including the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. That is Indigenization. Like, that is embodying what we have written in our strategic plan, and I salute you for that. It is also teaching feminism. It is also teaching women's empowerment and so many other things. So I love how this is just a course that is hitting so many different aspects of what is needed. And I love how you're a person bringing pragmatic experience into a school, creating a course about it, and then hopefully creating more. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, okay, who else can we get to come in and make courses like this? Because, you know, teachers, other professions that we really need to be making more of. So thank you for leading the way. Cheers.
Trustee Parsi.
Thank you. I thought I read, I can't find it right now, but I thought I read in your proposal that you had something about legal. You're going to be you look at legal cases. You look at the law of so you do a court. You look at the court system and stuff like that. Is that part of your course?
So, when cases do come up, so for example, the Sabicki case that we're talking about recently from Winnipeg, I tried not to have a lot of overlap with our law course, which already exists. So I kind of preface, ideally I would have law as a prerequisite, but obviously in high school we can't do that. So as we talk about cases, I will sort of front load the kids with, if I'm talking about first or second degree murder, homicide, what does that mean? What does that look like in the judicial system? So I don't spend time exactly like we would in a law class, because I also teach law. And just to avoid that overlap, they do give context anytime we're talking about a case as to what that looks like legally, in a legal framework. Yeah.
Trustee Westerby.
Through the chair to the presenter, this is really exciting. I love seeing the diversity of offerings that our students get to delve into, find their passions and learn real world experiences. Would you be able to touch on at all if there are any like social systems and like the intersections of those systems and people's individual identities and how it would affect, because I know you mentioned about law, so would you be able to touch on that at all, like for example domestic violence and how that might impact criminology?
We haven't touched on that specifically. That's a good question. This is just its first year, not even finished its first year yet. So I can see that as something that would come up, but as to having covered it formally yet, no. But there's definitely room for that, for sure. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Trustee Moss, I didn't see her.
Thank you. Of course, you can go off on all kinds of bunny trails with this, right? I know there's a big problem with, you know, catch and release right now. Vancouver saying 40 people commit 6,000 crimes or something. And so how sort of, what's your parameters that you set for this so that you
There's work in you.
That was funny. So how do you sort of set parameters to stay the course? No pun intended.
Of course. So because I do have a formal background in law enforcement, it's a little easier for me probably to not go down those rabbit holes because I can dispel myths sort of a little faster. We talk about prolific offenders in Chilliwack. I worked on that unit. So we talked about missing people globally. We talked about the Madeleine McCann case. And I actually encourage my kids, because when those doors or those walls do come down a little bit, they're able to share more. We're able to have a little bit more of an open conversation. So when I can, I definitely, you know, I work to shut it down, but I do encourage more open conversation with my students, but not obviously for weeks at a time, within the structure of a class session. Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. I thought we'd just do all the presentations and then do the things one in a row. Then we'll get all our questions out.
The second presentation this evening will be for drumline 10, 11, and 12. It will be presented as one presentation for 3 courses. In this presentation, you will see the differentiation between the 3 grade levels. You will also probably be wondering why drumline 10, 11, and 12 would be a new course when it's something that we have been offering for many years. What we need to do through the BAA process at times is right size or align our district's courses. We were using contemporary music as the course code for drumline, and the decision across the BAA committee in conjunction with the staff at Sardis Secondary was that contemporary music should be held for rock band, school of rock, more contemporary courses, and we would create a BAA for drumline. Drumline BAA exists right beside us in School District 34 Abbotsford, created by some teachers at Robert Bateman, and so it was easy for us to find and follow a framework that fit. And then the teacher that will come up and present, Mr. Warner, was able to contextualize it for for Sardis Secondary's fit. So I'll invite up Chris Warner from Sardis Secondary.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So, drumline is an incredibly powerful course. 8 years ago, or 7 years ago when we started it, there were 16 students in the course. Next year's enrollment is sitting at around 90, I believe. Is that about right? And currently we have 3 ensembles, and we are probably going to be looking at 4 for next year. It's powerful. It moves audiences. I know several of you were there this afternoon, and it has a presence, and it's a lot of fun. Students come out of the woodwork, and they all of a sudden just shine in this area where they wouldn't normally shine anywhere else. So I really, really appreciate this and love this about this course. Some of the rationale behind this, to develop a sense of belonging within the musical ensemble. Often students don't or can't find that connection somewhere, but music seems to be pulling it together for those students. So I really, really love this. We have a community. I start every year by talking about the fact that we are a family. We are a community of learners. We are a community of students that want to play music together. And we try to exemplify that every time we get together. So it's really so amazing. We have a really creative learning environment in there where I have students in a tiered system where they're placed in a spot where they're able to learn and not fear not knowing how to do something and get intimidated by other students that might be stronger than them. So we hold auditions. We're doing auditions right now, and I was explaining this earlier today, we have a large tarp that's set up in the middle of the room. We have every student play the same thing, learn some basic skills, and we want them to demonstrate those as well as something instrument specific that they were doing, so that we can actually, without knowing who they are, place them in the right group so that they can learn together with the same skills and bring those skills up together. So we don't have somebody that's been playing for 5 years playing with somebody that's never picked up a pair of drumsticks before, because that would be very intimidating for both. So we really, really try to do that. Music is powerful. It's meant to communicate, and I don't know if I can say much more about that. It's hard. It's a tough course for some students. It's really, really tough. I have students that are in grade 10 that are still struggling with some of the basic skills, but they're trying. They love it, and I see that. I see the fire every day, and I really, really appreciate the hard work that they put in, the perseverance. And the one thing that I really, really push in every course that I offer is that it's accessible to any student that wants to be in it. I think that's very important. Whether or not they have the skills to do it initially, we're going to get them somewhere where they feel confident in what they're doing. I think that's very, very important. With the First People's Principles, there were several. I could probably pull most of them into what we're doing in the classroom. We create connections in the community. We maintain and share what we do. mentoring program. I have mentors built right into the system so that we can help each other learn faster, better, and create a really, really great circle of friends, a circle of trust within the group. And of course, students are participating in a legacy at the school. This program was started about 18 years ago. I was very, very fortunate to be able to come in where there were some really good building blocks, and through an incredible administration team and staff at the school, we were able to build this up to something that's really, really powerful. We've had some amazing opportunities to perform in some really unique situations, from parades to the Canucks a couple of years ago, to a whole bunch of other things that are just pretty amazing. And the students love it. They are always in the classroom. They're always practicing. They're always, you walk past the band room, you're always hearing tapping. It's pretty encouraging. So there are 3 levels. They are cascaded one into the other in a process of building skills. In grade 10, really there's no necessary prerequisite to get in. You can start with no experience. We will get you there and move forward. We start with basic rhythms at the 10 level and move forward into more advanced rudiments, going right into grade 12, and just cascades all the way through. When you start, we're on stands because the drums are heavy. It's very interesting to see some of these drums that are 50, 60 pounds in a grade 9 trying to carry them. It's pretty good, but by the time they get to grade 12, they're natural at it. And so we've cascaded things moving forward. So between the 10, 11, and 12 grades.
Thank you so much. As you said, a bunch of us. Oh, can you just push your button? A bunch of us were at the I guess, what do you call it? Groundbreaking, I guess, at Sardis Senior, talking about the addition and the drumline performed, and it's always so fun to watch. But one of the things that I did really notice as I was looking around, I'm like, okay, well, I can tell that part requires a lot of hand-eye coordination, and then there's other parts. I'm like, hey, I could probably learn to do that part. So it seems like right within drumline there is it's built in that it's accessible, like you say, to a wide range of abilities. Even when they're doing an amazing performance, there are still harder parts and like a little bit less hard parts. Trustee Reed.
Thank you. I've been out of the game a little while. I haven't been in school for a few years, but I remember when I was, there was marching band. And is this separate from that? Do they integrate? Does marching band even still exist?
Marching band does exist, but we haven't done that yet. That's actually one of my, if you want to call it, pet projects for the next couple of years. There's an association called the Canadian Drumline Association that we are part of, and the next step is bringing in marching bands. So we're actually going to start with a small ensemble next year, probably representing more of a pep band, and move forward with doing a little bit of that. I know that Chilliwack Middle had a legacy of that many years ago, and I would like to start looking at bringing in that element at some point, because it's a lot of fun. We've got a great football team. We want to see what we can do there.
Trustee Proce.
Yeah, I was, I'm a recipient of your talent and also of Bateman's, and also I think it's GW Graham has a drum line. Is that correct? Yeah, and I really enjoy, it's a new thing for me. I've seen you guys at hockey games, but I've also found that it's an extremely successful program, and it also does a lot for parades. It does a lot for, because it's noisy, but it's also it's not jumble mumble. It's noisy, but it's very welcoming. And so I just think it's a great program. So I'm heartily in favor of this drumline process.
Trustee Moss.
So you're preaching to the choir here, I think. I remember when they played at the Olympics in Vancouver, right? The drumline was there. So maybe you can just give us a brief overview of what's different about this now from what we've had before that you're bringing to us tonight.
I think one of the things that, first of all, when I came in, I wanted to know what the music was. I didn't want to come into the district because ironically, I used to work at Robert Bateman Secondary School. And first thing I wanted to do was not change anything. I wanted to maintain the legacy that Sardis had with the Olympics, with other events that were happening with the Seahawks and with different parades. I wanted to keep that legacy. So what I did with the students is we collected all the music that the students have been playing over the years. We notated a lot of it because a lot of it was learned by ear. And we've created packages of music for the students to learn. So when they come in, we actually call it the legacy set. So we have a large set of music that is built for that. Then what I did was I started to look at the bigger picture and think about what other drumlines were doing around the province and even the country. And one of the things that we weren't doing was filling some of those technical requirements of the rudiments, some of the percussive elements of bringing in other instruments and things like that. And so that's what I've really done over the last few years, is really start to increase the technical aspects of the program to the point where the majority of the seniors can probably do 60 to 70% of the rudiments that you would be required to do as a professional musician. So, yeah.
Trustee Westerby?
Thank you for the presentation. I love the idea of an accessible music-based opportunity for kids to get together and learn how to be cohesive on a team and feel like they've connected with each other. Like, I can absolutely see the impact that this has had, especially on the students who are in it. But us listeners, I know every time I watch it, I'm just like, hey, yeah. So it's been great, and I love that you've made it accessible so that there's a space for absolutely anyone. I'm just looking over this, and I'm wondering, I have two questions if the chair will allow it. It says drumline 10 to 11, which is an addition to 10, and then 12, which is an addition to 11. So is it just kind of stacked, so 12
Yes.
is all 3 years?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks for that. And the last question that I have is, just seeing that drumline instrument exploration is listed there, it got me thinking about what types of drums there might be here and what lens that's coming through. And there are other cultures that have drums and drumming, and I'm wondering if there's room in here at all, if you could speak to that for students who maybe want to learn different styles of drumming or even bring in their own drums and bring that into as an element.
That's something that I've been exploring. I haven't really pushed too much in that direction yet, but I know I've wanted to bring in an element of the Indigenous drumming currently, and I've had some conversations with the Indigenous department at the school to possibly even have the drumline make drums and do some performance with that. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we are incredibly respectful, because that is part of their culture, and we want to, make sure that we're doing the right thing there. But other instruments, like world instruments, we do bring in other percussion instruments and different elements of that, but mainly we stick to the tenors, the bass drum, the snare, and the cymbals initially, because that's accessible. And then with the others, we do what we can. But that's one thing that I'm planning to do, is start to bring in other elements as we move forward.
All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate the presentation. And now we're moving on to our final new course approval.
Yeah, so our third course this evening is Outdoor Education 10. People might be wondering, outdoor education, that is a ministry course. It is at grades 11 and 12. There is no ministry course for Outdoor Education 10. What we want to do with this course is honor and respect the time that students that could be in grades 9 or 10 put into outdoor educational pursuits as they move through their graduation path into the grade 11 and 12. It will be noted here that Outdoor Education 10 is not to be taken in place of Physical Health Education 10. It does not meet the grad requirements for PHE 10, so a student could take Outdoor Ed 10, but they must also still take the Physical Health Education 10 to meet their graduation requirements. In this presentation, you'll see the laddering between what our district has created for the 10 into the ministry courses for grade 11 and 12. So like I said before, it's a combined presentation, so I'll invite up some staff from both Queacle Secondary and Imagine High Integrated Arts and Technology to present.
Hello.
I was just going to introduce Maria, and then she will do the lovely discussion. But Maria does everything outdoor at Imagine. There's electives, deep dives, and next year we're very proud that we're offering English First Peoples and outdoor ed. So that's going to be really exciting to see. And in her personal life, she is also on the emergency rescue team. So if you're ever doing stuff outside, and you may see her face, hopefully not. If you're doing crazy things outside. And she worked really closely with Bryce Orr from Queacol. So let's Sharon. I'm just going to skip over here.
So I'm here representing Queacol as Bryce is not able to attend today. So we'll let Maria explain the course, and then we'll add the Queacol spin and its impact for us.
Great. Okay. Hi, my name is Maria Gorlova. I'm an outdoor educator at Imagine High. Again, my background is search and rescue, and I've been involved in the outdoors basically my whole life, and can really speak to the benefits that I experienced as a child growing up outside. So Outdoor Education 10, the aim is to introduce our students to the outdoor activities, to explore different strategies of how we can connect with nature and limit our own impact, our human impact on nature, as well as build confidence through risk-taking. Outdoor education is inclusive to everyone. Students that may not feel that they fit in the gym, in PE, when they come to outdoor education, the outdoors is open to everybody. They have fun. We find activities that build confidence and kind of build that lifelong connection to nature. Our rationale for developing a course at a grade 10 level is to kind of support students with starting their journey with being outside. There's less of a focus on applying their understanding and taking a role in leadership as there is in grade 11 and 12, and more kind of being introduced to the different skills that are needed to be safe when exploring outside. And to kind of develop that connection with nature and kind of build a relationship to want to care and be stewards of our environment and our wild spaces. Also, some of these students, as you saw in the previous picture, they may not have likely formed connections outside of outdoor education. Spending 5 hours on a trail together is a really good way to get to know people that you may not actually get to talk to when you have no cell service. So we've had great relationships be built. We brought 30 students up to the top of Elk Mountain in June last year, and every single student helped each other. Everybody made it to the top. Yeah, guess. Here we go. So here's kind of the big ideas from grade 10 to 12, and some of the key differences are that grade 10 is an introductory course. There is more structure, and it is definitely more supervised than grade 11 and 12. There's more of a focus on developing a personal connection with nature, then kind of developing an understanding of yourself and of your abilities as a leader. And yeah, the participation, the collaboration, the teamwork that's involved is consistent through all levels of the course. And then lastly, these are just some cool activities that our students get to do, and not all of these students may have access to activities like this at home in their personal lives. They may not feel that they have enough confidence to go and take a course to learn how to go caving or river rafting or climbing or set up a rope system and lower themselves down a steep embankment. So it's really great to be able to offer these opportunities to our students to help build their confidence.
Mm-hmm. And the spinoff for Queacol is one of our homerooms is outdoor education. And it would be a shame not to be able to open this up to our grade 10 population. It is a critical homeroom for us, allowing for a sense of community. The number of students who, for mental health reasons, flourish. Our non-traditional athletic team sports child flourishes in this venue. Often we actually have some graduates that move on and move into professions that are both in the industry and in stewardship, which has been a backbone for our park system and within our Indigenous population as well. We rebuilt the trail along Chilliwack River Road there. So those are a few of our kids excelling in community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just had one question, and then I'll open up to trustees. Mr. Wicker mentioned that it is not a substitute for PE or physical health or whatever the actual official name of that is for 10. Is that just because you don't want to have to make have to focus on the amount of movement? It's partly about being outdoors. Is it because BAA courses can't be used for that requirement? Like, what's the logic for not having it just be a replacement potentially for certain kids?
Yes, yes, and yes. The biggest component is the health portion. And so in what used to be PE 10, it's physical health education. So the health component is missing, is the biggest reason. That being said, students do take part in some PE classes and do use some of the activities like hiking and etc. can be used, but it's that health component that we don't want students to miss out on, where this outdoors pursuits is a little bit more about being in nature and the stewardship. You never know what trajectory you're changing in a student that might not be physically active at all, that now gets the spark to do something. And I am one of those students. When I was in high school, I didn't do team sports really, but now, if I were to tell you all the things I do, it's because I took outdoor ed in my high school career. So,
Trustee, I think it's Reed, right? Yeah, both of you are using the same one.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I am honored to work with some youth that do war canoe races with local First Nations, and I've seen the flourishing and the confidence and the moving from having no interest in the things around them to being incredibly proud. Is there, from the Indigenous lens, is there room to move that sort of thing, like having students who maybe partake in that in their cultural daily lives to share that with other students within the course? And from a stewardship lens, do you work in things like how can we learn words for the land and plants and language? I assume you do. I just wanted, if you could just speak to it just a little bit.
100%, I know for sure at Kuyakul, we actually have a partnership with Indigenous youth police who supply our skips and the larger canoes that our students, when they do the canoeing unit in particular, and I know when they're in the forest, we have the naming book, so they learn the plant names.
Yeah, we do a lot of that. We look at Indigenous plants and invasive plants, and part of our connecting with nature is understanding what is here and traditional uses for plants, finding those halcomelum names, sharing them, and doing our best to use them. So there is a great holistic Indigenous component to it as well.
Thank you. Trustee Prose.
So yeah, I love that word risk, and I'm just wondering, do you teach edible plants, what you can eat, what you can't, and do you also teach map reading and compass and stuff like that?
So part of my one of my roles in search and rescue is a team leader, and I'm aiming to become a search manager. So I do a lot of map and compass work, and currently, well, we just finished our outdoor education elective, and our students were able to learn how to use a compass and design their own navigation course to go around the school and kind of locate places and pass their course off to another student, and they were also able to follow their course and understand that how important it is to be on your bearing and to know where you are and to be able to look on a map in the middle of nowhere and just using landmarks, be able to identify your coordinates and how to get out of a location.
Because quite often we take them to places that their cell phone doesn't work.
Yes, on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee.
Do you do food also? Like, do you also eat from the
We have not yet. We do look at foraging and try and identify things. We actually haven't been out in a time where there have been edible foods, berries, and specifically mushrooms. We try and encourage to not eat things that we don't know what they are, but there is a goal of looking at things that are easy to identify that we can use, such as stinging nettles, to bring back and look at making teas and taste things and kind of see their properties there. there is a goal, a safe goal.
And we've brought some elders in that have done some of the teachings for the specific plants that are used for medicinal purposes or in other cultural pieces, and had them experience it in a safer fashion.
Trustee Bondar?
I'm just thinking, my mind is going back around to, I think really this should be required for all students kind of course. And I guess that was maybe where you were going with your question about the PE requirement. I wonder, are those conversations potentially to take place where we can say, hey, there are students actually breathing fresh air, and that actually matters in today's world in a way that maybe it didn't in, you know, the 80s or even just a decade ago. Yeah, I'm just wondering, is that even taking place at a thought level?
Yeah, we often, at Queequeg in particular, often have our kids out in nature as much as possible, whether or not it's for specifically outdoor ed, like the outdoor ed kids are doing the higher risk activities, but often it's even a community walk that can happen off to the art class, for example, did a tour of murals downtown. So a whole variety of in nature aspects that we do, which I'd say most schools, as often as they can, would, sometimes it's location and accessibility, but yeah.
Trustee Westerby?
Okay, this is just amazing. Definitely love that, you know, you educators are able to bring your passions to the students and your lived experiences and helping them become who they want to be. Just love it a lot. So thank you for bringing your passions forward. I have one question because you've done so much answering already of my other questions. So thank you for being thorough. Just looking over those pictures and I'm like, rafting, yes. Hiking, yes. All that kind of stuff, yes. Spelunking, heck no. So is there an opportunity for students to just know their limits, and what is the adaptation for them if they aren't able to? And on that same questioning, what if there are students who have mobile issues and or need some sort of adaptive technology to help them get out into nature? If you can speak to that, I'd really appreciate it.
So for us, we try and structure our outings with different levels. We do have quite a few adults supporting our community. We will have a challenging hike to meet the needs of the students that really want to get out there and take risks and challenge themselves physically. For the instance of going caving at Chipmunk Caves, we had some students that were super gung-ho on confined spaces and wanted to go through those caves and see where they went. Other students chose to stay by the river, and we looked at things like fire building, setting up different rope systems, how can we put up our food up into the tree. So we do kind of plan for everybody. I'm not a huge fan of confined spaces, so I understand that. The same thing with hiking. We look at places, locations we can go to that offer that challenge, or offer maybe someone else just wants to go for a stroll with less elevation, and then an opportunity for others to just kind of hang out and just enjoy nature and be together.
Yeah, essentially all of our trips have a 3-tiered grouping system.
Yes, quickly, because we actually do need to.
Do we have access to any adaptability devices?
Yes, within our district. I know when I was at Vetter Middle, we had essentially a wheelchair that two able-bodied individuals were able to help our student at that time, and they went all the way up Vetter Mountain with the student. So, yeah, within the district, there's some adaptive pieces.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate all of the presenters. I'll say a big thank you to all of you. Trustees, we're going to do three just different motions real quick. We shouldn't have to have any discussion because I think we got all through that. So it should just be move, second, carry. So Trustee Swacky.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to address them in the order they appear in your package. I also just want to note for staff that have competing commitments this evening to please feel free to excuse yourself once the board has decided on the matter. With those two pieces noted, I wanted to move that the Board of Education approve board authority authorized courses Drumline 10, Drumline 11, and Drumline 12.
Sorry, seconded by Trustee Bonder. Any discussion? Yes.
The committee met on May 13th and May 31st to confirm the recommendations being received this evening. While currently offered under contemporary music, which was noted, this provides opportunity for new credit and aligns with the unique and exciting opportunities Mr. Werner and the team are providing at Sarda Secondary School. Consistent with BAA course requirements, these are 3 distinct course offerings, and we're asking that they be approved as such.
All those in favor of approving BAA courses Drumline 10, 11, and 12 as presented? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, moving on. Trustees, thank you. Do you want to do the honors of all 3?
Thank you very much, Chair. Bear with me. There. Thank you. I would move that the Board of Education approve Board Authority authorized course Outdoor Education 10.
Seconded by Trustee Reed.
Thank you. As previously noted, I've already mentioned when the committee convened and reviewed and approved these for recommendation. I'll also note that consistent with BAA course requirements, this is a distinct course from Outdoor Education 11 and 12, which are offered by the ministry as approved courses. While not a prerequisite to those courses, BAA courses may not be a prerequisite. It is designed to complement and to support students that want to go on and participate in Outdoor at 11 and 12. Just as a final piece, it was mentioned in the presentation, but I'll highlight, in my view, the value of this learning. There's maybe more opportunities for outdoor education, but there's also increasingly more interruptions from kids being outside, from kids being active, from kids using their hands. So this is a great opportunity, and one the district will be well served by.
Not seeing any other hands up. All those in favor of approving BAA course Outdoor Education 10? That's unanimous. And moving on to the final one, Trustee Sankey.
Thank you very much, Chair. Finally, I would move that the Board of Education approve Board Authority authorized course Criminology 11.
All right, seconded by Trustee Bondar. Seeing no comments this time. All those in favor of approving BAA course Criminology 11? That's unanimous. Thank you so much. Okay, we are moving on now to formally 5.2 BAA courses reaffirmation. Mr. Wicker. Oh, thank you to all the presenters. I see you shuffling out.
Hi.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Is it? Oh, actually, if you're done, you can do it. Actually, Trustee Swanky, that's fine if that was what was planned.
Thank you, Chair, and certainly appreciate Superintendent Savage, Assistant Superintendent Savage, and Principal Wicker are both here. If they can lend anything, I believe the materials for the board are before us. What I would like to highlight is that there are 24 courses before us that reflect the work of the Board Authority Authorized Committee through this year. The committee met 6 times between January and June of 2024 to review our BAA course offerings, to update previously approved courses as needed, and to renew a cycle of review for previously approved courses, ensuring they both support the well-being and learning of students and to remain compliant with ministry direction. The committee work included representation from each of our secondary schools, that's all 5 of them in the district, and from the district team to support the discussion and ensure alignment with ministerial policy. Between committee meetings, there was considerable work done with district teachers to update these courses and to ensure they could be offered in the coming school year. I want to highlight that reaffirmation tonight allows for these to be offered in the coming school year. My gratitude to everyone involved with those for their contributions to bring these recommendations forward. I do want to note that each course has been previously presented and approved by the board. As such, what we've been provided with tonight is a briefing note. This has already come to the board for approval, but this does allow us to ensure compliance and to ensure that everything is acknowledged as being fully updated. When we get there, my intention, reflecting the desire of the committee, is to move these courses be reaffirmed in a single motion. However, as we dispose of questions, if a member wishes to consider the merit of a specific course being offered, I would ask that they request it be addressed seriatim. We can address it separately from the on-block motion just to expedite this discussion. If there's any questions, I'm hoping we can dispose of them now, and then I'm happy to put the motion on the floor.
Thanks, Trustee Swanky. I was going to say the same thing. Are there any questions before we just make this motion? Trustee Moss?
So I appreciate the list because I know sitting on that committee, there was a need to go through and see what was still sitting there as a course but not being utilized. Like the horseback riding course at Chilliwack Secondary, which is no more because I think we lost the facility that they were using. it got sold. So this is great. This is timely, and this is great work done by the committee and much appreciated.
Are there any questions before we put the motion on the floor? Okay, Trustee Swanky, hit it.
Thank you. I'll use the recommended motion that the Board of Education reaffirm the BAA courses, 21 of them as attached. I'll just make a request, a note for the minutes that they reflect each individual course as being reaffirmed for clarity and compliance with the ministry and BAA requirements.
Seconded by Trustee Bondar. Anyone wish to speak to this motion?
Doesn't sound like there's much opposition. Thank you. Just thank committee members for their work. And again, all the teachers behind the scenes that enable these opportunities, they were doing the work in order to bring that back to the committee table, in order to bring it here tonight. So lots behind the scenes that makes these learning opportunities possible.
All those in favor of approving the list of BAA, reaffirming the list of BAA courses as presented? That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, so we are moving on to the presentation on the strategic plan update 90-day cycle. I believe that's our assistant superintendent.
So really quickly, yeah, thank you. Just a summary, this is our third presentation. We normally have 3 for a school year. Just a summary, we actually switched to the 90-day cycle plan a couple of years ago. Quick things, one would be, it takes just basically 90 days, allows school to be able to focus on few number of goals. They also can take advantage of the learning from the previous 90-day cycle. And I think collectively, I think the board has seen multiple 90-day cycle stories done by schools. And the difference is, instead of having a plan that sits on a shelf for a whole school year, school staff are able to galvanize around one single goal and then go back and reset if things aren't met at the end of the day, and being able to support a strat plan. So for today, I think we're going to pick 3 things for transition. We're going to look at children and youth in care. Mrs. Jordan will present, and then graduation coaches, Mr. Manuel. We'll go with those 2. Thank you. Over to you, Mrs. Jordan.
Thanks, everyone. So we'll take you back to a bit of a journey back to our FESL that we presented back in August, and some data around our children, youth, and care. And we know that we have a gap in our completion rates, particularly our 5-year completion rates for all of our students, and those students who the ministry has touched their life at some point in their K through 12 journey. And so we've spent this year, not just the 90 days, but we've spent this year trying to uncover what is it that exists, what are the barriers that exist in our system, and what are the things that we can be doing differently in order to plan and support our children, youth, and care. So with the help of Salvina Sharp, our District Principal of Student Services, and Jessica Adams-Lepret, we've met with a group called Channeling Youth Voices, who are a group, a part of a research project through UFV, and many of those students who have recently graduated from our system. And spending time with that group and providing space for them to be able to share their story as they they had their education journey with School District 33. What could we glean from that? So we gleaned 2 things. One was that for many of them, school was an important place to change the trajectory for where they saw themselves heading. And 2, that we do have some gaps. And so 2 of the things that we would like to highlight for you, they're on the report. The first is that we need clearly defined children in care support people at each of our sites, as well as at the district. So that's the first gap that we are looking to address. The second one is around consistent identification of who are our children in youth in care. Sometimes we have children, students coming into the system, and it's not clear to us what their home situation is. And so we need to clear that piece up. We also need a system of tracking the planning and support that is happening for those students, and not just a checkbox of tracking. What we delved into is that the important part was around how are we paying attention to that sense of belonging for that student. And so delving into some research, particularly from the Office of the Representative Children and Youth in BC, they've done some extensive research in how systems can pay attention to those domains of belonging, and that's how they've articulated it. And it's around culture, community, family, and place. So when we are planning for our students who are in care, how are we paying attention to those particular domains? So we took that information back and started to build some planning tools. So we've actually called it a belonging protocol that we are going to be asking our support staff and our schools to be following. And we were so excited to be able to share this belonging protocol with our Channeling Youth Voices group. And we were like, yes, we've nailed this one. What we came back with was some real honest descriptions of, hey, these are some things, these were some blind spots that we needed to pay attention to. And so we've adjusted the protocol tools, and so you'll notice them on the left-hand side there. We do need to take them back to this group to have them look at, hey, did these changes, adjustments meet the mark? We've brought these tools to our principals and vice principals and also received their feedback on how this is going to look. And also going back to that first gap in our system around that district, that person who will be collecting those planning and support tools, just to have that second look to ensure that we are taking care in planning for each of those students who are in care. Our next steps are, our hope is to roll this out next school year, starting in September, to have some really good data on who our students are and how we are planning around belonging. So not just the checkbox, hey, we've checked in with that student. How are we paying attention to those domains of belonging for each of those particular students? I should also, I think I didn't mention this, around connecting with our outside agencies, so the ministries, because what we were finding in the past is that there was miscommunication between the ministries and also our system. How are we receiving? So where we've landed is a point person for each of those agencies and a point person for here at the district. So that change of information happens between those particular individuals in a timely way.
Thank you so much. I think this was just really, really important work. This is a group of students we know struggle, and we have been having a hard time even having data on them. And that's, I think, the first step. So I think I'm just really happy to see this. Do any other trustees have any questions? Sorry, Paul, if you can press your button. Trustee Reed.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'm familiar with Channeling Youth Voices. They're a very honest bunch. Very wonderful. For members of the public, they actually did like a documentary series, didn't they, on life in Chilliwack as a youth in care in 2022. That's available on their website, and it gave a lot of information. So I don't have a question so much as just thank you so much for seeking out that particular group and those particular voices, because those are the people that are being missed the most in the data, I think.
Trustee Pondor.
Yeah, thanks. Mine is also just a hat tip to that project, and it's one of its originators, Marinelle Measley, who you probably are speaking with, and her vision for staying true to the voices of those students mattered so much to her, and it just resonated through the series, and it is so cool to see that coming back in some tangible steps for our district and for ways to move forward. Thank you for that work.
Trustee Crosset.
A couple of questions. Is this something that you would implement in grade 1 or kindergarten? Is this something, and you would have that connection with the ministry then immediately? So there's an instant communication at that level? Okay. And
Yeah, so in a practical sense, Trustee Prosy, we have a point person at our e-reg desk who will take the call or the email in this case from our point person at the ministry. They document that a student, there's been a transition at home for that particular student. They send an email to the school principal, as well as this school support person, because each school will now have a support person at the school, and then they begin to initiate what we've deemed as the belonging protocol.
And so will that go from grade to grade, teacher to teacher? And just to finish off the question, will that end up with the grad coach? Will that be part of that role?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Our plan is that it will transition with the student all the way through. One of the difficulties, and I think I can't remember who talked about the tracking of data, is that sometimes we have good data for the student in the moment when they're in care. What we struggle with is telling a student story. Who are the students who have ever been in care? And just because they aren't in care at a certain point in time doesn't mean that we still don't need to plan and support that student through their entire journey. Does that make sense? And then we need to talk to Dave about the grad coach, because for sure that needs to be part of the support that they're doing as well. Thank you.
Trustee Swanky, are you putting your hand up?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I believed another member had.
No, you can put your hands, like, don't be shy to just put your hand up. It's kind of hard when people are like one pinky up. Trustee Swanky,
First, I'll echo previous comments, just my appreciation for the workers mentioned that these are children and youth that are struggling in the system. I would be more explicit and say that looking just at the provincial data, not a reflection of our district, this is an example of where systems continue to fail students and fail children in this province. So this is really important work that's being undertaken. More specifically, you mentioned there's that routine connection between team leads. I just wondered if you could speak to the frequency of meetings between those leads, because up-to-date information is incredibly important. Also, if there's can you shed any light on, like, what is the process? New information is provided. How does it filter out to that school or that school-based team that is working directly with that student?
Thanks, Trustee Swanky. Those are really good questions. But I think so. With respect to the nuts and bolts of when a student moves in and out of care, that information in the past we've relied on envelopes coming from caregivers to the school, and then that information filtering through. We're trying to streamline it a little bit, so actually the information is going to flow through our e-reg desk. So, which makes sense, because our registration desk is when students move in and out of our system. That's where changes are made. We're also we know that the information, the data will be entered into MyEd in a consistent way so that we can pull it out in a clean way as well. When that information comes into e-reg, it'll be the e-reg desk then that sends out an email to the school principal, as well as likely, and this is part of that is still in draft form, the child and youth care worker at each school site, who will hold our children, youth in care as the support people at our sites. They, along with the school-based team, creates the planning and support tool, the protocol, along with the outside agency, and we are asking for it 4 times a year. So which is again, we want the daily connection because that's important. The meeting 4 times a year is the more formalized piece that then is submitted to our district person, who also has the list, our list of students that we need to have that extra layer of support on. If that counselor, because they are a counselor in a district position, feel, if they're missing some of those protocols, they can then do that follow-up to say, hey, school, and these are students that we need to loop back to and ensure that we've done some planning. Yeah, sorry, that's really nuts and bolts. But
I appreciate the desire to not be granular, and I often one saying we don't want to be granular at this table, but I really appreciate it's hard not to, because This is an incredibly small set of students in our district, but as I said, like the data is very clear that this is where there's the most work and the most need for improvement. So, thank you.
Trustee Westerby, did I see your hand up earlier? Okay. You don't have, oh, you do, oh, okay, sorry.
This is really great information. As my colleague has pointed out, we've been in discussions with MCFD. We had them represented at the table, and we spoke directly to them. So, really glad to have this update and to see how much work is being done in this way. So, my question ultimately is about if there's any way I can see these protocols a little bit closer. If there's a way I can look at that. And I guess maybe it's a little bit too nuts and bolts for this meeting, but how exactly does the staff do this protocol? I mean, is that too general of a question?
It's a really great question, Trustee Westerby, because it is there is some nuanced pieces to it, and the Channeling Youth Voices brought that up, right? How do you have vulnerable conversations with youth who are saying, I can't share this, I can't, I want to share this information with you, but their concern is, does it put their situation, does it create more unsafety for them, right? And so we have some work to do with staff around how we have planning conversations in good ways with students to create safe spaces, and also support them. So safe spaces in school and support them outside of school as well, if that makes any sense, yeah. As far as the tools, sorry, you did ask for the tools. Yeah, we're happy to share those with you. The only thing that I would ask if we could run them by our working group one more time, because we have made some changes that we want to have their eye on before we make them public. Yeah, thank you.
I realized I did have just one very quick question, just how privacy works. When you were saying like we have okay awareness of how many kids we have who are currently in care, but not a lot of information on kids who have ever been in care. I'm just wondering where the line is between that knowledge, which would be very helpful for us, but also privacy and, if a family had struggles, say when their children are very young, when the kids are back with mom and dad and everything's fine, they may not want a new school to know that just for various reasons. So I'm just wondering how we're dealing with that.
So one of the things that the ministry actually has with the data set would be kids ever in care. The data is protected, but actually we use that part of a FESL presentation, which allows us to do that. The place that we have to lean into, which has been an ongoing challenge, even from the ministry's consideration, is around the kids that are in care on a regular basis in a school district. And what the ministry says is that each district has a different context, and we have to learn to work with the agencies. In the past, we've always looked towards MCFD and the Minister of Children and Family to try and solve the problem, and they can't because of a lot of the protocols. So this is actually a great system. We actually tried this a while back. This is a commitment between us and the different agencies of timely, relevant information to be brought back to our schools. So this is work in progress, but I think we're taking the right steps, so thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I guess we should move on to the next part of the 90-day cycle.
Mr. Manuel.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity to talk about grad coaches, and thank you, Trustee Poussey, for bringing that forward, making the connection to the last presentation. So as you probably recall, earlier this year, we had this new initiative of a grad coach. It was an idea that emerged out of some meetings with other districts. And so we took an example from another district, followed some of their lead to develop this idea of giving more attention to our Indigenous students, particularly around the work of graduation, recognizing that we don't have parity when it comes to Indigenous students' graduation and all other student graduation. So that's the context. We created graphics on the top of this page is that 6 areas that we really focused on. And again, this was research that our department and with some leadership from Dan Heisler, looking at some other models in other jurisdictions, came up with these are 6 areas that we're going to focus on. So the 6 areas are relationship and mentoring, that was 1, transitions, community connections, career counseling, academics, and parent and guardian engagement. While I'm going to just share a little bit, and this document shares a little bit of what has happened over the last 90 days, we are doing a more thorough look into these 6 areas. It starts with asking all the grad coaches to reflect on those 6 areas and look at where have they found some successes, where have they found some challenges, and help us develop a plan for next year. Because this right now is a 2-year term that they're all seconded into. So we're kind of almost at the end of 1 year. We will complete that and actually get to some of that data around impact later at the end of this month and probably early July when with Brenda and the Indigenous Ed Department, we'll be able to gather that information, take a look at our achievement results, and even what you'll see, the way that we've presented some of the information here is still more like things that we've experienced. It's our intent still. What we don't have is a real strong understanding of the impact. And all our grad coaches understood that this is a 2-year term we're looking at, where we know what our goal is. We want to get to parity with our graduation rates. This is a really significant part of that initiative. But at the end of year 1, we're going to really look at it, make some decisions about how we approach year 2. And at the end of year 2, we will, again, make some decisions about where we go. You also know that this is money that was allocated through our targeted dollars. So what used to be teachers that were primarily for enhancement were shifted into this role. And so we've gone through a process around that change. So just looking at some of the things that you see in that document that I want to highlight. One is they really took the transition goal and divided it up into a focus on grade 9s, the kids that have just transitioned into the system at secondary, and also focusing on the grade 12s who are transitioning or getting ready to move on. So you see 2 examples there of things that they've done. One is they created a grade 9 day camp where it was really about building relationships, building trust. We actually had some grade 12 students come along with that group and really have some of that mentoring and that relationship building there. We had 90 students take part of that. A day, what you see is some of those pictures are some of the stations that they were part of. And again, it's really about engaging the grade 9s. As grad coaches, we recognize that they couldn't do it all. They can't do it all in 1 year either. So really targeted the grade 9s and the grade 12s. So that's where a lot of our data collection this year will sit in those 2 grades. Another group that they focused on is our grade 12s with our post-secondary. So you can see some data around typically students get access to like a day where post-secondary schools come in and they speak to our students and open up opportunities. Our schools have career facilitators that are able to guide them towards the goals that they have. But what this group was doing was trying to add another layer. So for example, when they went to UBC, they went for a tour. So they had a couple buses. They went to UBC and they met with the folks at NITEP. And so as an Indigenous student, they were able to connect to a part of UBC that maybe if they went on a regular tour, they wouldn't get to do. So those are the kinds of things, and some of these were very targeted. So, the KPU came because we have some students that were from Katsi, Semiahmoo, and Musqueam, and they wanted to look at a post-secondary institution that was on their land. And so they were able to take those students and go with them and say, here's an opportunity that you would have. Again, not what you would get if you were just going through the system. So the grad coaches the intention was to provide that support that the students wouldn't get in a normal way. Some follow-up that happened. So Dustin Louie is the executive director for NITEP. Following that tour to UBC, Brenda Point organized a tour a meeting with Dustin Louie and our grad coaches just to talk specifically about our students transitioning to UBC, which would have never happened. We wouldn't have been able to do that kind of thing. So that's an example. We're also noticing, we just went, we're in the process of going through our awards ceremonies and noticing some of the awards that have come forward. what we've, again, this is not the data we will be able to bring forward in a kind of more a holistic report, probably in our August session. But we have noticed that we are getting a lot more in terms of applications and kids coming forward. So we put some numbers down, and I think we're really pleased with that. What we don't have a full understanding of is, did we get, all the kids that could have applying? So even at the advisory this morning, we had that conversation about how do we get to all those students that maybe haven't thought about applying. So our grad coaches are doing interviews, but that's where we're going to lean in and just do, continue to push. Rely on the fact that grade 9s were introduced to this, so that as they move through the system, it's not going to be, grade 12 is almost too late. Like when you are at that place, so you want to talk to these kids earlier and say, get your, volunteer experiences, get your resumes ready. So that's work that's going to probably yield some results later on. And the last one I just want to highlight is the community connection. So our grad coaches, again, they also work closely together. So while they work 4 days at their school sites, on Fridays they come together just because they're trying to learn from each other as well. So they put together a parent night at the Say building, and good representation. Parents came. You see a quote from a parent of how that was useful. But that's, again, work that we've learned that we need to do it on an ongoing basis, because it's hard to get the advertising out and get everyone's attention. So moving forward, we've created a calendar for next year with some ongoing sessions. We've got one grad coach who's actually going to have kind of office hours at Suwali, just to be able to go in and be there regularly and to kind of build that culture. So we are definitely, as you can see, we're at the early stages of something that's very new to us. But we're excited with what we're seeing so far. One other thing I'll just point out, in July, we are, for the first time, holding an Indigenous student course completion 2-week program. So in summer learning, and this is going to be at Stalo Nation, that we've got a space there. We're hoping to get like 30 students that, again, with our goal of reducing the number of kids that move to adult grad too quickly, making sure that they stay in the full grad program. We need to ensure that you don't want to get bogged down with English 10, for example. You want to be able to go, I got my English 10, I can move to English 11. So students that were close to meeting the requirements for the course but weren't quite there are invited. They can be referred from their counselor, from a school-based team, or from the grad coach to go into this 2-week program. And in a shorter time, in a culturally kind of appropriate way, we're going to have some of those courses delivered. So there's a series of courses like English 10, social, some of those grad requirement courses, and we're encouraging students to come and take that. Our grad coaches are at the center of that as well. Again, data that we don't have, we're at the early stages of this, but we are hoping to collect that to know what the impact of this work has been. So I'll leave it at that. That's kind of a little bit of work that's happened over the last 90 days. But as you can see, this is a work that we'll keep trying to get some data around.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to hearing the data for once we see what the actual results of this program have been. Any questions, trustees? Trustee Westerby.
Thank you. Just on the note of data, I'm wondering, how do you garner feedback? Is it just the graduation kind of numbers, or do you do any like conversation-based data feedback?
Just leave it on. Yeah.
Trustee Baldwin.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is kind of similar. I just was wondering about, do all currently identified Indigenous students have a grad coach in District 33? So do 100% of our Indigenous students have it for this year? And then, so tied to that, you'll be measuring
grad rate as it changes with respect to grad coaches, but there's likely to be many factors with it, with engagement specifically and so on. Is that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So at this time, they targeted 2 grades. So they were working with our grade 12s and our grade 9. So the other 2 grades would not have had the direct contact. The intention for all, for those 2 grades was that they would have one-on-one meetings with all the students in those grades. Having said that, there are slips and misses. There's kids that have challenges with attendance, but this is where our creativity comes in. I think we're working with our parent engagement to ensure that some of those kids that have missed days, we're trying to reach out to them. But at this point, those are the 2 grades. Recognizing, particularly at some of our big schools, that's a big group to try to again. And rather than trying to do everything for everyone, they're really focused in on those 2 grades.
Mr. Swanky?
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Really appreciated connecting with some of the grad coaches last week, getting the chance to hear from them firsthand. The one piece I wondered, is there data available, or will we be able to review data going forward looking at the transition rate of Indigenous graduates into post-secondary institutions? I know we can track that data within, I believe it's a 2-year period. I'm wondering, are we able to disaggregate that so we can track not just, we're increasing or we're improving upon our graduation rate, but we're actually attaining a meaningful graduation for these students that we're targeting right now?
Yeah, thanks. Again, good question, because in our FESL data, we do have that transition to post-secondary. I don't believe it's completely complete because there's so many institutions that our kids are transitioning to. I believe our better data is going to come from grad coaches who can track moving forward. It's not something that we have thought or have a plan for, but I can really see the value of that, of how do we connect to the kids that have transitioned. I think we are doing it to some degree, but I think that's an area we could do work way more closely, particularly our on reserve students, because it's not a large group. We could really kind of dive into that and make sure what opportunities do they have, and are they following through with it, particularly the next year and even a couple of years after. Yeah, thanks.
All right, trustees, seeing no more hands up, we're going to move on, but thank you so much for that fulsome presentation and all your answers to all of our questions. I know there's always more than anticipated, but so I'm going to go through the information items, and then trustees, just so you are all aware, I'm going to do a break before public participation. The information items should be pretty quick, so we'll do a little break before we do the public participation. Okay, so information item 3.1 is the board performance review report. So this was in the package for everyone who has looked at the package. Basically, the board does a self-assessment every year. This is, it's in policy that we do this, and it's not asking other people how we're doing. It's asking ourselves how we're doing. It's a bit of a team building exercise. It's an ability for us to say, what do we think we could have done better on? What could we do better on next year? How might we change things up so that we're working better together? In the past, we haven't found it, like the rubric and stuff we were using was not super helpful, we didn't think. So as reported last year, I believe, we said we would look at using some other tools, and this year we chose to use a rubric that was developed by BCSTA, and so all of the trustees were given an opportunity to answer, to give marks for various aspects of 2 sections, which were governance, legislation, roles and responsibilities, and planning for student success. And then we had a discussion as a board, and we had a facilitator come in from BCSTA, which was free, so that, just in case the public's worried that we're wasting our money, that was provided by BCSTA. That was a little bit, they were also using it as a chance to work on their tools, so I think that particular facilitation process wasn't necessarily as great as it could have been, just because it was more about that, like, did the tool work? So we'll maybe potentially think of doing it slightly different again next year, but you can see the board has some areas where we are doing quite well. We're doing well on supporting diversity and inclusion. We're obviously working towards building relationships with First Nations, partner groups, ensuring adherence to board policy, commitment to continuous improvement, etc. And then we're still emerging in our ability to consistently engage, although we have a lot of desire to do that, a lot of some room to improve on consistently engaging with First Nations and Indigenous communities. Can you scroll, Superintendent? So I don't know.
Mr. Savage, scroll down. Just scroll it up.
Just scroll it to
Just
the
scroll
bottom.
up that report. Make it larger.
Yeah. We're still working on making sure all trustees have sort of a common understanding of our governance role, achieving a clear and consistent level of transparency, and working effectively and cooperatively as a board. So there you go. The report is in the package. Okay. Trustee Moss.
Chair, I just want to note that the language here, where it says 6 out of 7 trustees participated in guided discussions with the facilitator. I would just like the language to reflect that I did not choose not to participate, but I was in fact prevented from participating by this board. And I did not, nor was given the opportunity to speak into this performance review. So I just want that on the record. Thank you.
That's on the record. Okay. And now we're moving on to 3.2, which is audit working committee report. That would be, I think Trustee Bondar was the chair.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Pushing my button. Thank you. Yeah, in accordance with our policy 160, board advisory committees, we send out advertisements this spring to the general public, to the school community, looking for interested members of the community that would like to serve on the audit working committee. And we, as the committee, are pleased to announce that we have appointed 2 committee members to this role, effective from May 2024 till October 31st of 2025. And those people are John Bartel and Paul Donaldson. We held the first meeting of our 24-25 cycle last week on the 5th, and the minutes of that meeting are attached. We anticipate the audit taking place over the course of the next couple of months, and we anticipate receiving a report from KPMG in the fall in time for our meeting in September. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Trustee Bondar. And we will move on to trustee written reports, which are in the package. And then 3.4 is BCSTA report. Trustee Reed.
Yes, thank you. I'll keep it brief. The BCSCA Capital Working Group report was issued. The link is in several of our emails. It's also available in the portal. Those are recommendations on capital funding and planning, and the sections are school life cycle and deferred maintenance, climate change, student population growth, and school area standards. That report was shared with the Ministry of Education and Childcare. It's quite extensive, lots of graphics and all sorts of different angles. So I highly recommend going through it. I'd also like to note that after gathering member feedback, BCSTA did decide to hold a full AGM in April 2026 before hosting the CSBA National Trustees Gathering on Indigenous Education in Whistler in July. So they will be held separately. I know that we did provide feedback for that. So, and then they always provide us with multiple resources, and they highlight things from the ministry and others. And one of the things that they did mention this month, and I think it is worth noting, is that 126 children and youth have died from toxic drug overdose in the past 5 years. It's the unregulated drug toxicity is currently the leading cause of unnatural death for people under 19 in British Columbia. And what they have done is they provide us with reports and sort of resources on that. So I'd like to highlight that for my colleagues as something that I thought was of note that they have raised for us. As well, there is something, the Senate Committee on Indigenous Peoples is launching Voices of Youth Indigenous Leaders for 2024.
The deadline is July 21st, so it is for Indigenous youth between the ages of 18 and 35, and they've asked us if we know of any Indigenous youth that might want to apply. The link is in the email. But because that deadline is bearing down on us, I thought I would highlight that for you. But essentially, they would get to go to speak to the Senate about their experiences as an Indigenous youth. So that's all I have to share with you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Reed. At this time, just because I know, it's hard to sit for this long sometimes, especially after we've eaten and drunk dinner just before the meeting. So we are going to take a 10-minute recess, so we'll reconvene at 7:16. everybody. I'm going to call this meeting back to order. So we are going straight into public participation period. This is comments or questions concerning the agenda. Only items concerning the agenda are allowed. Please state your full name, relation to the district, and which agenda item you're speaking to. Don't talk about anybody by name. You all know the rules. I think everyone here has done this before. So.
My name's Linda D'Armani, and I live in the district. And for diversity, inclusion, and equity, I thank God for this land, for our freedom, and I bless this meeting with truth and light and love. In Jesus' name, I humbly pray. I wanted to look at page 64 on the agenda, and it has the agenda instruction, and it said,
Sorry, which item is this? Just for our reference.
Budget 1, page 64 on the agenda. It says, it's the budget instruction. It says, in the budget, we're going to spend over $95 million on regular instruction. It's just over $2 million higher than last year. And if you slip down to inclusive education, it's well on its way to $36 million. Up almost $3 million from last year. And then we have Indigenous education, $5,167,000, up $130,000. Did you get that? 5 million, up 130,000. And the inclusive education was up almost 3 million. Then I saw another strange thing, and something different that is happening than is happening around the country. It was international students, and it said that the budget was just under $1 million, and it was down $35,000 from last year. And I wondered, why is that? Do you think that is because this Chilliwack board has a reputation, not just across the country, but internationally, to be controversial and divisive school district board? Is that emerging, or just a plain act or fail?
So anyways, I think maybe you have a little bit of a confusion about inclusive education. We're not spending like $3 million on queer kids, just so you know. Inclusive education is like all of the kids in the district who have any kind of learning needs, kids with special needs, all of that kind of stuff. So maybe you object to us helping kids with learning disabilities.
I wanted to ask what exactly was included in inclusive education, you know?
Okay, yeah, that would be a better question.
That is one of my questions. I wanted to know what was included
Secretary Treasurer, can you just give us a really brief explanation of what inclusive education covers? Or maybe one of the assistant superintendents can do that.
Yeah, so we receive funding according to the students who attend the district. So some of those students have special needs. They may be dyslexic, they may be in a wheelchair, they may be hard of hearing or deaf, and their educational needs are greater than other students, and therefore we need to provide some adaptive technologies or texts or additional staffing such as EAs or teachers. That's what inclusive education is about.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer.
Inclusive education is mostly mentally and handicapped. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, that's not the terminology that we use anymore, but it's students with special learning needs. They might have a physical disability, they might have an intellectual disability, they might have mental health, or no, that wouldn't be covered probably. You know, all of those things, all of the things we need to do to help kids have a good education, because we treat every single kid in public school like they matter.
Okay.
So my question is kind of about inclusive education also. Thanks for bringing up the budget. I'm Lynne Schmidt, Special Education Assistant, and I'm wondering, couple weeks ago, I went to the Make a Sunday with Jillian Gordon, and in high school, I'm wondering in the special education if there's any programs that you can bring in that will help these students with speech. I know they have speech pathologists, I think, in elementary and not in the higher school. It's very sad that some kids they just can't speak, and the technology is not going to help them if they can't enunciate correctly. The tech's not going to pick it up, like speech to text. So my suggestions, I think they used to have it before, is like music programs, because well, the benefits of the music is just they can speak, it's joyful, it gives them self-confidence, it can also do the companionship, just like all these other courses we heard tonight, where you know, camaraderie, getting together, community, speaking to one another, playing, just I know there used to be programs like that. Is that included maybe in this increased budget? Because it'd be awesome for them to have maybe their own music program or something like that where they can sing and do that.
I think we would have to take that as a suggestion, right? Because that's not something that particular thing isn't. But thank you for your suggestion. It's a good one. Feel free to write an email to the board. You can send it to board@sd33.bc.ca. Sorry. You have to push your button if you want to be heard.
Jillian Gordon or someone like that who needs to present it to, like all these other programs were brought forth by teachers. So what groups would
If you reach out to send a message to the board or send a message to the superintendent, you can find the information online of what email addresses all the district staff is. Make your suggestion and they can look into it. Thanks. Oh, sorry, we didn't hear your name when you started with the mic. Lene. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Darren Ollinger. I have a question about the grad coaches, whether that's exclusively for the Aboriginal students or if it's available to all students, and if it's available only to Indigenous students, are the taxpayers from all demographics paying for this special treatment? That's it.
Okay. We don't really use that kind of language in the district, Darren, just so you know.
What did I say wrong?
Just when you act like a specific equity seeking group is a special interest and doesn't deserve to be fully funded. It's kind of not the way we talk in education, but I will answer your question. So the Indigenous grad coaches are for Indigenous students specifically, but it comes out of specifically targeted funding. So there's money that we get from the ministry that's specifically for Indigenous students. Yeah. Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yeah. No problem.
Hi, my name is Judy Chalmer, and I'd like to talk about 3.1 of the agenda. I have watched the majority of this board demonstrate time and again that they are unable to consider concerns of the majority of our students while considering minority concerns. A few years ago, I was a supporter of this board's EDI efforts. Here are 4 examples where you've lost me. 1, the Enhanced Menstrual Provisions Policy is trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist, especially in elementary schools, which are some of the most unbiased places where the vast majority of students haven't even started menstruating.
Judy, I'm sorry. No, Judy, I'm not going to let you do this. There's nothing on our agenda about menstrual products, and you have had that question asked and answered so many times by this board. It's enough. It's enough. Do you have another question that does not involve menstrual products?
I have multiple questions. With all due respect, I believe it is a matter of public interest that this board hears of differing opinions in the name of equity, diversity, and inclusion. I am trying to show how you are giving yourself proficient in the EDI when, in my opinion, and many opinions, you're not proficient and there are things that you need to learn. So I'm hopeful that you will not shut off my mic and let me read what I.
Sorry, but no, I'm not going to let you read that. Unless you have something else to talk about that is not menstrual products. You can carry on if it's not that.
I wrote about concerns that an
Judy, if you do not stop, I will ask you to leave this meeting.
You are making things look worse for yourself. Shut me off. You've
Trustee Moss, if you continue to aid and abet someone who is disrupting our meeting, I will kick you out of the meeting.
She was speaking and she did not know you had cut her.
Okay.
this board is not listening. This board continues.
I am going to ask you to read, and I'm taking a recess until you will leave this. Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting back to order. Okay, we do have approximately 6 minutes left for public participation. I just want to say before we get started again, there are rules for public participation, and I'm going to enforce them. And I'm the chair of this board, and I know that there are some members that don't appreciate the way I chair, and that is fine, but I'm the chair of this board until this board replaces me, and this is the way I run things. If you want to say discriminatory stuff, if you want to say stuff that isn't on the agenda, I'm not going to let you speak, because that is against our rules, as everybody in this room knows. And so, with that in mind, if anyone has anything else that they wish to say, you can come up to the mic and you can say it.
Good evening, everyone. Deirdre O'Connor, parent in the district. I wanted to thank everyone here tonight just for the good work that they are doing, and to all of the staff and everyone that did the presentations earlier on the changes to the curriculum, the BAA course programs. That is what I'm going to speak to in this participation period. I had a question regarding to agenda item 5.1.2, the outdoor education, and I'm not sure if I maybe missed my opportunity when Mr. Wicker left for the evening, but perhaps somebody here might know. It was in regards to that wonderful outdoor education program. I think that that is just absolutely phenomenal. I know that I think a lot of the students would really benefit as Trustee Bonder mentioned earlier, from getting outside and exploring more. My concern when I was listening to it was about the costs associated with those wonderful programs, things like the rafting, how to access those outdoor spaces, getting to like the forests and all those wonderful trails, the costs associated with busing those students to and from, and how we would address things like equity and equality, and the haves and the have-nots, just making sure that the students that were applying to those courses weren't the kids that were always doing the cool things, and that students that were maybe lower income didn't feel like they couldn't apply to those. I know we do have some, benevolent funds, and the school, the SFAF, our secretary treasurer can help me out potentially with that, the affordability fund. We have those programs in place. Sorry.
Thank you so much for your question.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know the acronyms, and I know not everybody here does, excuse me.
No.
That can help with that. And the chair, if you'll allow me to speak for 10 more seconds.
Well, I can't.
She can't.
I cut
know.
other people off,
She cuts
so I
everybody
can't
off.
be unfair.
But I think you guys get the gist of where I'm going with that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. So do we have, that's a good question actually, about equity and the cost of some of these. How are we funding these programs?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So because it's a curricular course, there's no barriers, and so we can't charge for curricular courses. It's not an academy. The outdoor ed is available to all students, and if there's extra costs, it's borne by the school, or they do fundraising and they do some different things to make sure that's how that happens. But money can't be a barrier for students. So.
Fantastic, thank you. That's a good question. I'm happy to hear the answer. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else coming up to the mic, so we're going to move on to, we are on to 5.3, which is the annual budget 24-25, second and third reading and adoption. Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, so we've been talking about this for many months and presented it at the last couple of board meetings. So this is the second and third reading as required under bylaw, and the budget itself has to be filed with the province on the 30th of June. So we're sort of requesting the board's approval to do that.
So that was the Secretary Treasurer's not so subtle hint to actually pass this tonight. Yes, please, Trustee Swing.
Thank you, Chair. I would move that the Board of Education approve the second and third reading. Do we want to do it together or separate?
No,
Thank you very much. Second and third reading and adoption of the annual budget of the board for the fiscal year 2024-25 per below.
Do I have a seconder? Trustee Bond. Trustee Swanky, do you want to speak to them?
Just briefly, I'll reiterate some of what was highlighted at the last meeting. The proposed budget maintains current investments in the district operations, including those initiated as part of the amended budget made possible through the classroom enhancement funds. Additionally, there was questions about special education or inclusive education dollars. I'll highlight some of the strategic investments highlighted in the April 16th strategic planning presentation, which spoke specifically, I believe it was integrated care or service teams. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the integrated care team. So it's a balanced budget, which it needs to be. It maintains a moderate surplus, one that we expect may improve based on future announcements of dollars from the ministry. And as was already noted by the Secretary Treasurer, we have a deadline. We should pass this tonight.
Anyone else? Okay, Trustee Wester.
Thank you. I just have one question to the Secretary Treasurer, if the chair will permit it. That it's just arisen recently as a result of some new news. And I'm just wondering, how much does a by-election cost our district, and where does that come from? And if we've made provisions just out of this, in this case.
I think it costs around $100,000. Question number 2. It comes from the operating fund. And question, sorry? Yeah, but it's the main, like there's an operating fund, special purpose fund, so it's general operations. And question number 3, have we got it in the budget? I think we do, but I wasn't prepared to answer that question, so I don't want to assert positively. I can certainly email you outside of the meeting and let you know.
All right, seeing no further questions, all those in favor that the board do second, third reading and adopt the annual budget of the board for the fiscal year 2024-2025 as presented. That's unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Okay, we're moving on to 5.4, which is capital plan 2025-2026.
All right, so this too is me. So today we saw what the I was going to say the end, or I guess the midway part of this process looks like. We were out at Sardis seeing a school having ground broken for an addition. So what we're bringing to you is our plans for the next 5 years, our requests to the ministry for future projects. So you can see it's divided up into 3 main categories. So, obviously we're a growing district and we need some additional land. So that's one of the areas. Another one is buildings, actually putting new buildings up like we are doing at the new East Side Elementary. And then the third category is additions, which is what we did today. We saw a large addition. So this was in the pack. I'd certainly entertain any questions that you've got. And this too is an approval by the board to send to the ministry.
Trustees, any questions on this? Trustee Swanky?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. It's always, to me, illuminating when you're looking at the proposed capital plan 1 year in comparison to the previous year. I just wanted to clarify, last year Watson Elementary was identified as a proposed addition, 200 enrolling seats, 40 seats and 40K. This year I believe we have LME and CSS both proposed for addition. I just wondered, is there any context you can provide on that shift in priorities?
I think we've got a couple of different moving pieces, right? So we've got some new capacity opening up on, certainly on the east side, and we'll be looking at boundaries later this year. And we've got increasing enrollment in different areas. Every year we get a little bit more information. We're also starting to collect information, a lot more information on where future developments are, particularly, from Indigenous lands. So I don't think I can sort of pinpoint any one particular factor, but I think there are several factors, and that's probably the best summary. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I appreciate that, and I think the point about moving pieces and the larger context is probably as much detail as we can get into in a public meeting anyway. I did just want to highlight the building envelope. There was 4 pieces that were included in last year's. We only have 2 remaining from this year, reflecting that the other 2 were funded. So I just wanted to highlight, good work by staff to bring these plans forward, to get them through the ministry, and for members of the public, for members of this table that sometimes look at this and think, does this translate into action? A great example to me of half of what we asked for last year got funded. Very hopeful that this year we'll see those other 2 projects funded.
I had 2 quick questions. The first one was, first I was actually just confused about the K and the E and the S, and I was like, 40K? I was like, 40,000, what the heck? But I realize now that's kindergarten, elementary, secondary, but what I was confused about still was ADR says 100 elementary and 200 like what, I don't understand those. Is that because it's a middle school and because technically 6s are still considered elementary?
Yes. Yes, I mean, it's a very peculiar grade grouping, and it just doesn't work for our schools. And what I will say, and this is inside baseball a little bit, but when I work on the K8s, I touch all 3 grade settings, and when I have to input 10-year enrollment for those schools, it's an absolute killer.
Excellent. Okay, that was an easy one. And then the other question I had was, so we have 3 new school requests. So new Southside K-8, new Southside Elementary, and new Southside Middle. And then in our site acquisition request, we've got sort of like one combined Southside Elementary Middle. Like, is it just we are only allowed to ask for a certain number of site acquisitions? Like, why don't they correspond exactly to the schools? That was...
Just because needs might change. We're not sure what sites we'll get, and I mean the other trick here is how many of these do you think we're going to be funded? If we're lucky, in the next 2 to 3 years, it might be 1 or 2 on these lists, right? Yeah. So it's a little bit of you want to be you want to put a little bit of variety in there, but meaningful variety, right, and options.
Okay, so that makes sense. They're never going to suddenly buy us 5 sites in 1 year anyway, so we don't need to put that. Okay. Trustee Moss.
So even though this is called a plan, it's more like a wish list, correct? And so the ministry will say, oh, thank you very much for that, and then come back and do whatever they please based on whatever their formula is that they're using, correct?
Yeah, so I want to agree with the concept of wish list. If the ministry is listening, these are our wishes. But I do want to say we put this list together in consultation with the ministry. So there were 1 or 2 things that we moved around based on the feedback we got from the ministry. So it's a little bit more educated. It's like we're putting the higher probability stuff there.
Okay, excellent. I don't see any more questions. Does someone want to make the motion for me? Trustee Bondar.
Yes, I will move that the Board of Education of School District 33, in accordance with provisions under Section 142(4) of the School Act, hereby approve the proposed 5-year capital plan for major capital programs for the 25-26 year as provided on the 5-year capital plan summary for the 25-26 year submitted to the Ministry of Education and Child Care.
If you use the word and do the second one, we can do it as one motion.
And that the Board of Education of School District 33, in accordance with provisions under Section 142(4) of the School Act, hereby approve the proposed 5-year capital plan of building envelope program for the 25-26 year as provided on the 5-year capital plan summary for the 25-26 submitted to the Ministry of Education and Child Care. Copies attached.
Awesome, thank you. Seconded by Trustee Swanky. Trustee Bondar, do you want to speak to your motion?
I do not.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion at all? Oh, yes. Not seeing anyone, all those in favor of approving the 5-year capital plan, both parts of that motion. That is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. I'm just keeping an eye on time. Okay. 5.5 is property bylaw for Stitas Slalom to Tilt easements. Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, that would be me again. So one of the projects that we finished probably 1 to 2 years ago was Stitos, and part of the arrangement with that was we co-own or I guess run and habit the land, the road that goes into the school with the RCMP. While we were building the school and building the road, it wasn't entirely clear where the parameters of that would be. So what we're doing is we're coming back. It's all finished. We've had surveyors out there, and we're basically just defining those boundaries, firming up probably the final pieces of that school.
Trustees, does anyone have any questions about this? Trustee Westerby.
I've been there, so I'm pretty familiar with the space to a degree, I guess. And I'm just having a hard time really visualizing exactly what's needed to be done. Is it just literally doubling up the lanes that are there?
No, it's already been done. It's putting it into words.
Oh, okay. Thank you, because I was like, thank you.
So it's easements on the property, right? So we need to agree on exactly where those lines are drawn, and didn't want to formalize that completely until after the work had all been done.
Yeah, so no work will proceed. This will just be like a document. So trustees, this is a bylaw. So as per usual, someone needs to make a motion to approve all 3 readings in one night. If that does not get unanimous consent, then we can't approve the second part tonight, which no pressure. I'm not trying to twist anyone's arm, but you will make the Secretary Treasurer sad because I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No. It's not a huge deal. If there was some concerns, we could push it. I'm only kidding. We could do the readings in September, but it would be cleaner to just get it done unless anyone has any concerns. So if someone could make the motion to do all 3 readings, that would be appreciated. Trustee Pond.
I will move that the Board of Education approve 3 readings of property bylaw number 2024-01 attached.
A seconder, please. Trustee Westerby, sorry. All right, unless there's any discussion on that, all those in favor of approving 3 readings of the bylaw this evening? That's unanimous. Thank you so much, trustees. Okay, so then we can move on to the second thing, which is actually approving for 2nd and 3rd reading, if someone can move that. Yeah. Trustee Bondar?
I will move that the Board of Education approve first, second, and 3rd reading and adoption of property bylaw number 2024-01 attached.
Seconder? Trustee Reed? All right, all those in favor of the motion? Thank you, that's unanimous. Okay, so now we are moving on to Policy 163, Audit Working Committee Amendment. Is this Trustee Bondar or Secretary Treasurer? Go ahead, Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, I think after some discussion, the board gave a direction to amend the policy, and rather than having it as a subcommittee of the board with board representatives, make it as a committee of the whole in which all board members attend. So that's what you see before you tonight.
Are there any questions, trustees, before we put the motion on the floor? Not seeing any. Does someone want to make the motion? Trustee Moss. Sorry, Trustee Moss, you need to press your button.
That the Board of Education amend Policy 163, Audit Working Committee, as presented.
Seconded by Trustee Bondar. Trustee Moss, do you want to speak to your motion? Press your button.
I think this is a good idea. Having a committee with so few trustees does tend to pose a problem for quorum. And it's a good idea for a committee of the whole to be viewing the entire audit. So I'm fully in support of this.
I'm just gonna briefly speak to this. In the past, we've had 3 trustees sit on the audit committee, and then the auditor comes in and basically does the same presentation to the whole board in the public meeting. It's kind of a bit of a waste for the people who've sat in on the audit committee before, because they're hearing the same presentation again. This way, the whole board can see the process, and then the audit will be still presented to the public as a document. I think that it's actually, as a chair, it's sometimes hard to get people to want to be on the audit committee. So this way we all have to be on it. It's no offense to the secretary treasurer, but it's a little dry. It's just a little dry. So this way we're all on it. We're all in it together. We're keeping track of the district. So yes, I think it's great.
Just, well, one more note on the dryness of the audit. The audit is important because if boards do not present balanced budgets, and if boards are not responsible ultimately for the budget, they get fired. So it is important. It's very important, actually. It's one of the 2 most important things we do, this and student achievement.
And nobody said that it wasn't important. It said it was dry. There's a difference between important and, yes, things can be a little dull and still be very, very important. So anyways, we're excited. We're all excited to get down to work with the audit committee now. All right, seeing no more hands up, all those in favor that the Board of Education amend policy 163, audit working committee as presented. Thank you, that's unanimous, trustees. Okay, the meeting summaries are in the package. Just before we go into public participation, I do just want to myself make a motion to extend the meeting potentially past 8:30 if we're not quite finished the superintendent's update at 8:30. Our rules say that they can only be 3 hours, so I do need to make that motion now because I want to make sure that we're not feeling rushed during the superintendent's presentation. I think we'll almost get there, so probably like an extra 15 minutes maybe. So can I move that we extend the meeting to the completion of our business this evening? Seconded by trustee Reed. Any discussion?
I have a question. Yes. How long is the superintendent's report?
It depends on how many questions people ask.
Just scan through, might be probably 15, 20 minutes maximum. It's a combination presentation.
All right. All those in favor of extending the meeting to the conclusion of our business? Opposed? Thank you. That was, yes, you saw. Okay. So we are moving on to then public participation, comments or questions concerning the agenda. Same rules as before.
I saw that you guys were doing lots of work on math and all the academics, and that they were doing lots of really good work that way. And I was wondering when they were going to start to do the testing to see what the results of all this work that you've been doing will be.
So I'm not quite.
For
are you
children,
strategic
because you guys
math?
are talking about academics and the math, and you talked about doing all the work in the classrooms, getting teachers trained in because last time you guys had really failing grades for reading and writing and math, and so you spent some money and you guys worked on the stuff.
Yeah,
so I was wondering when they were going to do.
They can certainly answer that. I just want to
do the
clarify. We don't
testing.
have really failing grades. We're close to the provincial average for everything. We're a little bit below on 1 or 2 things, but not failing. Yeah.
It was kind of a sad state of affairs, and even you were worried about it at the time, but you had a plan, and now we've seen your plan, and I was wondering when the testing to see how the results of that will be. It is on. Oh, I have to press
Yeah. Okay, good question. We have the FESL, which is our framework for enhancing student learning, which we will be presenting in the fall. We've had some preliminary results, though. We just received our final results for FSA, which is the Foundational Skills Assessment for grades 4 and 7. And we reviewed those earlier this week, and really positive results from grade 4. both in literacy and numeracy. We've kind of hit a high mark, I'd say. It looks like in the last 5 years, where our students have definitely, we've seen an improvement there. Grade 7 on the FSA, it looks more of a status quo, but a lot of our efforts in the last 20 months have been at the elementary level. And so we're seeing some early results there. So that's very promising. And then we will have the final, this year's results will be rolled up and presented in the festival in September. So. And I think you've seen in some of the other 90-day cycle updates that we didn't go into detail on. There is a fair bit of qualitative data from the both our literacy initiatives and numeracy initiatives around how the teachers and students are responding to the in-service and the work this year. So there's some trending, there's some data there that's worth a look as well.
I read some of that
data.
So I was thinking that you were doing some work, so I just wanted to know how it was showing up in the data.
So far, so good.
All right, not seeing anyone else coming up to the mic. Going once, going twice. All right, we are going to move on to Superintendent's update.
Thanks, Chair. Just give me a quick second.
Since you guys won't listen to us, I won't listen to you either.
Awesome. Bye.
Good night.
So I have three quick updates, and then there is another update. So the first one actually is timely. The first one is going to be Bill 22, 2024 Safe Access to Schools Act. I just want to provide the context to all of this. As you may know, and I'm just going to be pretty bold, for the past many years there has been protest out there against SOGI inclusive education across the province of BC. Partnerships, BC School Superintendents Association, BC School Trustees Association, BCTF, BC ASBO, all of the partner groups have come together working with the ministry. And if you recall, back in November 24th, 2023, Minister of Education, Rashmi Singh, Education and Childcare, and with all the partners released a statement around inclusion about what's happening around the province. At the end of the day, we talk about the fact that we want to be able to create safe spaces for students to thrive and staff to thrive, and that's non-negotiable as a system with 60 school districts. So after lots of conversations, the province has come up with the Safe Access to School Act. In summary, the government passed, on May 16th, they passed the Safe Access to School Act. It provides the ability to have regulations for the provincial government. And then on May 31st, regulations was passed, which now allows to have basically access zones now in place at all K-12 schools. What does this really mean? This was, again, going back to the work the ministry has done and all of the statements. And I think going back, the Ministry of Education and Childcare have released 5 statements since 2016 around belonging and safe spaces. 2 ministers of Education and Childcare have done that, multiple partner groups. But I think despite, and I know it's the democratic right for people to protest, but not on school sites. So now finally this is now in act, which basically means that these zones are in effect on school days from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and also during extracurricular school activities at all BC K-12 public and independent schools. And so really the quick fact basically in all of this would be is that the school officials have the authority to be able to call RCMP and the local police to be able to prevent anyone from coming. And I think there's the whole notion of the zone by itself. And so there are specific zones, and again, if there's a disruption to the school and that impacts students and staff, the police now have the authority to be able to ensure that the school protest is taken care of, and so education can continue. So this is actually a really important piece of legislation. Been lots of work, and I think part of all of this is that there's been lots of patience by all 60 school districts and the province around tolerance and inclusion. But there comes a time when, at the end of the day, we cannot have disruptions around school sites. And so this is now impact. And one more thing to talk about would be is that these zones are basically during the school year. And again, they expire at the end of the school year. They're reenacted again at the start of the school year, all the way up to 2026 is from what is what's part of that. So that's the first update for consideration. And then just to go to, if there's a school district office connected to a school site, this also impacts those office spaces. And if not, then Section 70 of the School Act allows the board chair to be able to ensure that there is no disruption at board meetings, which is also part of the legislation and what goes on through the School Act. The next one will be update to draft administrative procedures, cell phones and digital device use. And as you know, on 26th on January, Premier EB announced he's going to ask the Ministry of Work and School Districts to address the use of cell phones in schools. And so there are three concrete actions they talked about. The main one was the restricting the use of cell phones in schools. And so part of that was lots of discussion. But part of that was that the ministry came up with the notion of being able to change the provincial standards of codes of conduct. That was amended on April 12th. And so the request has been from school districts to be able to ensure that this information in the revised provincial standards of codes of conduct is included in schools and districts' codes of conduct, and that we are able to provide that information back to the Ministry of Education and Child Care before the start of the next school year. So we are actually in process working with multiple partner groups. What I've shown you up there on the screen is the ministerial order that by adding the amendments to the existing order that's going to come into place at the end of June, effective July 1st. There's some key components in there, sections that need to be added. And so part of the work would be is that we are now just about finishing a draft cell phone admin procedure, as well as an admin procedure for schools code of conduct, which aligns with our existing policy 310 around student expectations, rights and responsibilities that was completed a while back. This provides clarity. It also talks about the fact that we have a responsibility to abide by ministerial orders. It's binding, and I think I've mentioned this to some of the parents out in the community. A ministerial order as well as a policy is binding on the school district. It's not negotiable. So that is going to be implemented, and it'll be part of the. And then this information will be sent out via my memo, my letter at the end of the school year to all the parents for them to understand what the new cell phone admin procedure looks like, to get a good sense prior to the start of the school year in September. The last one, this actually is timing. I think you may have noticed some of the trustees sharing microphones. This has happened the last couple of times. Our sound system is dying, and I think we've been trying to patch it up multiple times. You've seen there's been a couple of times when there has been a pause to the recording structure by itself. So we've actually spent a bit of time for the last year and a half to 2 years looking at the whole board office configuration to be able to update the infrastructure. Part of the infrastructure update is also the boardroom. And I think when I bring this notion out to inform the public, so realistically, this information has been brought to the Board of Education for consideration. One was during the debrief session on February 13th, Director of Facilities and Transportation, Al Mantasso, provided information about the draft board meeting plan, the boardroom plan. And then again, I brought the information through my memo to the members of the Board of Education about the final draft plan. And what I want to talk about is there's a new layout function, and I'll show a map in a second. It's going to increase the functional space. It's going to have fixed boardroom tables for part of it, and then the other half is going to be flexible to be able to use for multiple purposes. This is a boardroom, but it also is a staff room. We have lots of crunch points throughout the school year for multiple meeting spaces, so this is used really well. These tables are super hard to move, and so that's been a bit of a challenge by itself. The orientation, also being able to, as you may have seen, there's some hazards of running electrical outlets across the tables. So being able to make sure that the tables have electrical outlets plugged in, we can actually access that by itself. Option to create enhanced space. We can have multiple meetings in this place. Enhanced audio and video, which has been a challenge. The system had to shut down a couple of times because of overheating. And so how do we continue to be able to be compliant with policy 170, because that's again binding on staff in the school district. Recordings. The last most important piece would be is ensuring that this boardroom space is accessible to the members of our public, trustees, and senior staff with accessibility consideration. And I think that is one of the bigger pieces with our plan by itself. So here is the new configuration. It's going to look different. If you look on the screen, the board tables, the backs are going to be against that window. The audience will sit where we are sitting right here, as you can see. And then at the end is a table that is actually movable as we have staff members attending the meeting. And the second part is that we have flexible table groupings that makes it a configuration for other staff meetings. So I do want to be able to inform the Board of Education. It's a public board meeting, and so this information is public. To understand this will be taking place, would have actually be in place for you when you come back in September for the start of the brand new school year. That is the end of my presentation, and I do want to be able to introduce a guest today. So as you know, last week, Friday, we had our first Imagine High commencement ceremony. It was phenomenal. It was nice to have it in the theater, and I think this has been a journey. But just to put things into context, when I made the same comments at my meeting at my speech on Friday, this would not have been possible if not for the visionary leadership and the thought process that has gone on behind the scenes for many, many years once you got the building. You know, and so lots of people behind the scenes have, spent hours thinking things through, lots of conversations. But at the end of the day, if you were at the commencement ceremony on Friday, you really got the sense of true belonging, talking about the kids could actually thrive. So I really want to be able to acknowledge people here. I know Imagine I, Principal Brooke Holler and Vice Principal Stacy Parsons, all the teaching staff and support staff at that school that have championed the vision for that school. Assistant School Superintendent Dr. Savage, who has been a champion of that school vision, and then Program Director Janet Carroll, who's here. But here's the magic, right? Because they persevered with the visioning pieces, they create this amazing learning place where kids get to be their authentic selves. No matter who you are, you show up, you are accepted at Imagine I. They get to lean into the areas of passion, real-world problem solving, and at the end of the day, this goes back to my previous conversation about being able to celebrate the human spirit. This is when you see people thrive, where you create a place of belonging, where you're accepted no matter who you are. You're able to have a dialogue with the center and not sides, and people are able to listen and be critical thinkers. So anyway, congrats, Janet, Carol, it's yours. I'll just, Kirk, you're gonna put your computer on? Oh, you already got it, thank you.
Well, hello, good evening. So nice to see, I'm so lucky I get to see some of you twice in like 3 days. It's awesome. I'm very excited to talk to you this evening about the K-12 Integrated Arts and Technology stream in our school district. I could talk for hours, but I know the hour is late. But what I want to do tonight is kind of hit 4 main points. I want to talk about where the IAT, the Integrated Arts and Technology stream is, what it is, what we're doing there, what this last year has been like, and what we're kind of looking forward to. And I stand, in front of you, but there are lots and lots of people behind me, as Rohan mentioned. 3 school staffs full of people, board office folks, lots and lots of very thoughtful, passionate people have gone into making the IAT reality. So I'm going to start by, you're probably thinking Janet can't count because I have 2, 4, 3, but I wanted to give you an idea of how and where the implementation has happened for the K-12 IAT program. So you can notice, look in the middle, year 4, A.D. Rundle, we started with a kind of a pilot cohort there 4 years ago while we were getting Imagine High ready to open. So we started with 3 divisions 4 years ago. We're in our 4th year of implementation. Now we have 9 divisions, and they are part of A.D. Rundle, but they stand alone as their own cohort. Does that kind of make sense to folks? Then if you look at Imagine, which is at the bottom, we're into year 3. So 4 years ago, we were getting ready to open. We were thinking about what the school could look like. We were buying paper clips and desks and interviewing kids, doing empathy interview with our students who are going to be coming to us. And then now we have, as you know, our very first grad year and grad class this year. And we are fully 9 to 12, fully choice. So we're nothing but choice. So we rely on students wanting to come to us from all over the school district. Unlike if you go to year 2 with Leary Integrated Arts and Tech Elementary, it's a K-5 catchment school that has choice seats in it. And those choice seats are spread out among all the divisions. So we've contextualized the IAP program based on the reality of each site. But you see those arrows going down? The idea is that a student could go from kindergarten all the way through to grade 12 in the integrated arts and tech stream. Make sense? You're all nodding, so I think I've hit it right. So what are we doing when we're implementing? We're implementing these 4 pillars, and these pillars were developed by Dr. Savage and former Assistant Superintendent Janet Hall prior to, I think, when you first bought the building and decided what the school would be. The old UFE building, which is now Imagine. So I'm not going to go into great detail, but it's quite visionary what we're doing with the BC curriculum. We aren't making up our own curriculum. We're just being quite creative in how we use it. So you'll notice that we have integrated disciplines. So whenever possible, we are integrating disciplines, areas of learning. So kids are connecting big ideas and competencies across disciplines. So instead of going from this science to this English to this math, we are developing projects where they can kind of see how all those things blend together, but we don't sacrifice the rigor. And that's something I really wanted to emphasize. It's important that we all understand that it's about the curriculum. We also have collaborative culture, which means teachers are in collaborative pairings or triads. Kids are collaborating. We're collaborating with community. We bring in experts. It's all about people working together, overcoming differences in styles, temperaments, knowledge base, and coming to common understandings of problems. We also have a visionary staff, which means we're really attracting teachers and staff members who really like this way of learning. And they're really excited to be involved in it. And they're like champions for this way of teaching and learning. And the last is authentic learning, which is connection to the real world. So as students are learning through projects, they're connecting different areas of the curriculum and they're applying it right away to real world problems. And they're also kind of keying into their own passions and interests in an area. So it's kind of a funny thing to describe. It's narrow, but it's open. It's narrow in that it's scaffolded, it's carefully thought out, but it's open in that students can kind of come into these projects where they are in their interests, and they're still going to be able to follow the path of the learning. And at the center, we have learner and community. Community is big at all 3 schools. It's about kids feeling safe, comfortable, noticed, heard, seen, and being able to show their gifts and talents. And then we have equity, diversity, and inclusion around the outside because we accept all kinds of kids for all kinds of reasons. And we have kids who have agents in Vancouver and have been in TV shows, and we have kids with diverse needs. We just are a school for everyone. Those are the 4 pillars. So how have we done? I'm happy to report that we've done quite well because implementing something is a heavy lift. You know, like you think, well, we'll just do that in a couple of years. Realistically, implementing something as fulsome as the IAP program, I keep saying to Brooke, the principal of Imagine, 3 to 5 years. Every time she might get a little frustrated, it's 3 to 5 years for an idea to take root, to take hold, for people to build the culture around it, right? So as you can tell by that first slide, we're at various phases in the 3 schools because they're at different places in their implementation. But here are the things that are making the difference, and I've starred a couple that I want to focus on. Big one, teacher leadership. Peers teaching peers, peers supporting peers, colleagues supporting colleagues. So we have a teacher leadership group that has representation from each of the schools. They're volunteers. We also work with the curriculum department. We meet 5-6 times a year. We compare notes, we learn together, we talk about where we are in the implementation, we get ideas from each other, and then back to our schools to do the supportive thing. We know, because we're all smart people, that it's your colleagues that guide you, right? Administrators have a lot of influence, and our administrators are awesome at all 3 schools, but really the change comes from the teachers. It's the revolution in the head. People just start thinking differently about what they can do and the confidence working with their peers. The other one I wanted to emphasize was our inclusive design teams. What are those, you wonder? Inclusive meaning planning for students where they are at the beginning of planning. What we tend to do or have sometimes done in schools is plan for the middle of the class, and the kids who are exceeding our expectations or not meeting them, then we try to retrofit those kids back into the game. Whereas the inclusive design team, which is our resource teachers, our learning assistant teachers, our childcare workers, our EAs, counselors, these folks are coming alongside the teachers at the initial planning stage. So they are planning for all the kids in the community from the get-go. Very, very powerful, because kids have entry points into the curriculum. And that's what we mean by equity. Equity is access to the curriculum for every single kid. And that's something to celebrate at our schools. You know, I'm waxing very passionate and poetic because I'm very passionate about this. We have awesome schools in Chilliwack. Every one of them is fantastic. But I have a special place in my heart for this school because I have seen the difference. And I'm going to tell you a really quick little story. Today, a boy named Austin gave his capstone. He's in grade 12, and his capstone was a 3-course meal that he developed, cooked, and presented, and I got to eat part of his presentation, and it was fantastic, and his mom was there with him, and he was in Surrey before he came here, and he was in fights. He didn't want to go to school. He's a struggling reader. He was going down a little bit of a life of crime with some bad kids. And here he is. He's going to get into the chef's program next year at Imagine. And he was saying the thing he loves about cooking is he feels confident, and he feels like it doesn't matter if he can't read that well. He said, because I can memorize the recipes, which was just awesome. Anyway, I have to get his recipe for his lemon dessert. It was like unbelievable. So some of the other things I have in there are like support for teachers with planning and assessment, joint staff meetings. We have teacher collab teams. We have exhibitions of learning at all 3 schools. We are collecting data. We have an aligned curriculum path. I could talk for hours, so I won't. I'll go to the next slide. All right. So I asked the principals to tell me what they wanted you to know. And this is Brad from Leary, and there's James and the Giant Peach, their giant production that they did. And the kids, the whole school was involved in the production. Backstage, on stage, tech, costumes, props. A huge team effort with the adults coming alongside and mentoring them. And he said, our foundational approach is to collectively provide rich educational opportunities focused on integrating literacy and numeracy, direct instruction, with project-based learning. And by embracing core competency learning, we provide students with voice and choice in their learning. And those are really key concepts with the IAT stream, is the voice and the choice. And there's a picture of the giant peach and the kids. Wonderful production. Sarah Gamboa, the principal of Rundle, said, by merging creative arts, technology skills, and project-based learning, we have fostered innovation and engagement, encouraging students to explore diverse and interconnected learning pathways. The program's success is evident to the increased student participation, improved academic outcomes, and the creation of a vibrant, inclusive school culture. A little data point, the kids in the IAP program at 80 Rundle attend better than the kids who are not in the IAP program. So, interesting, right? That engagement is so important. And then we have Imagine. So Brooke proudly said, Brooke Holler, who's the principal there at Imagine, our inaugural graduating class is being granted over $94,000 in financial awards. And that's a tiny grad class of 55. Next year we'll have like quite a bit more. This significant accomplishment is a testament to the dedication and perseverance of our students, supported by unwavering backing of families, educators, coaches, and the spirit of giving back to the community embodied by so many of our hardworking students. And for those of you who were there at the grad on Friday night, there they are doing their heart. Pretty exciting. Do we have time to see the videos, or would you like me to wrap up? They're not very long, and they're awesome. Some of you saw them from an angle on Friday night, but I think they're worth seeing again because they really show the culture of Imagine High, especially. And what I want to highlight is that at Imagine, what we're doing is not just innovative, it's like innovative with a capital I. So we've had Dr. Leighton Schnellert from UBC assisting teachers with getting their heads around how to plan rigorously for this kind of learning. We have, the school has presented at the BC Superintendents Association meetings to rave reviews, I think it would be fair to say, kids and kiddos and their teachers. We also have had visits at Imagine from the Kelowna School District, Qualicum School District, North Vancouver, Vancouver Catholic School Board, and Maple Ridge. Why? They are dying to know what we're doing and how we did it. What's the secret sauce, they ask. And we just say, you know, just get some smart people in a room and you'll figure it out. And of course, our inaugural grad class. So here's a couple, our co-valedictorians. We have a little reel about them that Kirk's going to play for you.
I'll play one.
Oh, they are back to back, so you have to just cut it after that. I think Neil is first.
I'm a senior here at Imagine High. When I first came to Imagine, it was definitely a change of pace. It felt a lot more welcoming and a lot more personal. At Imagine, I've developed a ton of new interests that I never really expected of myself. I realized that I definitely wanted to delve more into psychology, philosophy, politics, and even game design. After this year, I'm going to be going over to Halifax to enter in Dalhousie University. I'll be swimming on their varsity team, and I will be enrolling in their Bachelor of Arts Psychology program.
I think our grads have had a lot of opportunities to have their interests honored.
I'm definitely grateful that Imagine has given me a bit more autonomy and space to learn about what I need and what I will thrive with.
I hope that they find joy in their lives.
These buttons, don't they drive you crazy? So where are we going next? Well, as I said, it's a heavy lift, but a lot of people are lifting, which is always a great thing. So I said everything, everywhere, all at once, because there's a lot of moving parts that you have to kind of keep attentive to. But one of our major goals is to really attract students from all over the district to the IAP program, particularly at Imagine, because it is a full choice school. Continue with the pedagogical approach through people like Dr. Leighton Schnellert. Also the teacher leadership, which is key, keep developing that and supporting that initiative. And continue with our community provincial partnerships. We've got partnerships with UFB, community businesses, just really expanding, connecting our students to the real world. I think that's kind of the essence of it. And also sharing what our implementation process with other districts and learning from them. They're interested in what we're doing, but we're also going to learn from them as well. And then programming. So next year at Imagine, the Professional Cook Program, Vancouver Community College, Chef Tim is going to be starting a program, and the students have chosen a name for the cafe. It's Bread Zeppelin. Very Imagine, don't you think? So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for letting me share the good news, and I hope you ended on a happy note tonight.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I was so sad to miss the first grad from Imagine High. I was so looking forward to it after we've seen, you know, the school start a number of years ago. Sadly, my face was melting on that day, so I couldn't go for fear of scaring the children. So anyways, thank you so much, everybody. This was a great meeting, and we almost made it, like only 3 minutes over. So the next Board of Education meeting will be September 17th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. after the summer. So if those of you who we may not see again, the board still has some other stuff to do before the end of the year, I'm sure. But, you know, if we won't see you again, I had wished just the most wonderful summer, relaxing, restorative summer to every student, staff, and family in the district. So, everybody, meeting adjourned. Thank you.